Hey again, for today's lesson, we will be discussing about JavaScript. So JavaScript is one of the most popular and widely used programming languages in the world right now. It's growing faster than any other programming languages. And big companies like Netflix, Walmart, and PayPal build entire applications around JavaScript. And one good thing about being knowledgeable enough with JavaScript is that the average salary of a JavaScript developer in the United States right now is roughly around $72,000 per year. So it's a great opportunity to get a good job out of learning JavaScript. Aside from that, you can work as a front-end developer or a back-end developer, or you can also work as a full-stack developer. When you say full-stack developer, it is someone who knows both the front-end and the back-end development. So JavaScript is the programming language of HTML and the web. On the other hand, what can you do with JavaScript? So for a long time, JavaScript was only used in browsers to build interactive web pages. Some developers refer JavaScript as a toy language before, but those days are gone because of the huge community support and investments by large companies like Facebook and Google. So these days, you can build full-blown web or mobile apps as well as real-time networking applications like chats and video, streaming services, command line tools, or even games. So JavaScript was originally designed to run only in browsers. So every browser has what we call a JavaScript engine, and that can execute JavaScript code. So JavaScript engines in Firefox and Chrome are SpiderMonkey and V8 in 2009. A very clever engineer called Ryan Dahl took the open source JavaScript engine in Chrome and embedded it inside the C++ program, which he called that program Node. So the Node is a C++ program that includes Google's V8 JavaScript engine. Now with this, we can run JavaScript code out of a browser, so we can pass our JavaScript code to Node for execution. And this only means with JavaScript, we can build the back end for our web and mobile application. So in a nutshell, JavaScript code can be run inside of a browser or in Node browsers. And Node also provide a runtime environment for our JavaScript code. And finally, we have what we call our ECMA. So JavaScript was invented by Brendan Eich in 1995 and became an ECMA standard in 1997. But what is ECMA? So ECMAScript is just a specification, while JavaScript is a programming language that conforms to this specification. So we have these organizations called COMMA, which is responsible for defining standards. They take care of this ECMAScript specification. And the first version of ECMAScript was released in 1997. Then starting from 2015, ECMA has been working on annual releases of a newest specification. So in 2015, they released a new script, which is also called as ECMAScript version 6. So this specification defined many new features for JavaScript. Okay, so let's have a quick demo on how we can use this. So actually, this demo is not how we build real-world application, but this will provide us a demo so we can see how it really works. So for those who are using their laptops or your computers, you can do it as well. So for a while, I'll be sharing my screen, or I'll be sharing another tab. Then click on inspect. And then you'll be able to see there a console. So just click on console. And then for us to have an example, so we can just write here console.log and then hello world. So this is just a simple example. So once we click enter, it will display hello world, or what we have, or the content inside our console log. Aside from that, we can also include here mathematical expression. For example, let's have 2 plus 1. So once we enter this, it will provide us the sum 3. Or we can also have alert dialog box. So to do that, just click on alert, or write in alert, and then, for example, we want to include the word welcome. Oh, sorry. Wait a minute. We have there welcome students. So as you can see, we were able to have an alert box with content welcome students. So that is actually how we do it through our search engine. It could be through Google or Firefox, or whatever is browser that you have with your computer. Next one, the question here states, why study JavaScript? So JavaScript is one of the 3 languages web developers must learn. So the 3 languages are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So HTML is used to define the content of the web pages. So on the other hand, the CSS is used to define the layout or the design of the web pages. But after creating that, we also need to declare how will the web pages behave. And that is the work of our JavaScript. So JavaScript can change HTML content. So one of the many JavaScript HTML methods that can be used is the get element by ID. So in this example that we have on our screen, it helps us find an HTML element with ID, demo, and changes the element content in the inner HTML to hello JavaScript. Or you can also set that to this one. So in here, we have here the date. So it will display the date and the time. So that means once we click on the button, click me to display date and time, it will display to us the current date and time of our computer system. Next, JavaScript can change HTML attributes or attribute values. So in this example, so we opt to change the value of the SRC attribute. So again, SRC stands for our source attribute of the IMG tag. So you can see here, there will be 2 images, one for a light bulb that is on and another one for a light bulb that is off. So that in that part we use, or we change the value of our SRC attribute. So one is for the off.png and the other one is changed to the on.png. Next, example is that JavaScript can change the CSS styles. So changing the style of an HTML element is a variant of changing an HTML attribute. So in this example that we have, it changes the font size of the content. So it will be 25 pixel. And then another one is that its style color. So the content will change its color into red once the click me button is clicked by the user. Another example here is that JavaScript can validate data. So depending upon the system that you are creating, the data can be validated using JavaScript. So in this example, we have here input a number, or please input a number. So the user can input a number, and then after providing the number, the user will click on the submit button, and then based on the JavaScript code that we have declared, it will detect if it is a valid number or not. And then in JavaScript, we also have what we call inline JavaScript. It is almost the same with our inline or internal CSS. So inline JavaScript can be achieved by using the script tag. So again, script tag has a start tag and end tag, and writing all the JavaScript code inside the tag. So it can be put inside either head or body tags depending upon its functionality. But most of the time, we include it inside our body tags. We have here the proper syntax in declaring inline JavaScript. So again, we have the start tag and end tag for our script. And then in between those tags is the JavaScript codes. So if you will see this kind of script or code, that is what we call inline JavaScript. Next, if there is an inline JavaScript, we also have an external JavaScript, which is the same with our external CSS file. So JavaScript code are stored in separate external file using the .js extension. So that means any file with a .js extension will be treated as a JavaScript code or file. In the HTML file, the script tag can also be used to indicate the location of a JavaScript file. And we use the src attribute to assign the path and file name of the file. Advantages of using external JavaScript includes it separates HTML and the code. So we can relate it into our house, diba? In our houses, we have different rooms for different purposes. One room is for cooking food. So that would be for the kitchen. One room is assigned for our bedroom. Another room is our living room where we can watch television or accept visitors. So that is also the same logic as with this one. So we'll be able to separate HTML and our existing JavaScript code for us developers to be able to maintain it in an organized manner. Another advantage is that it makes HTML and JavaScript easier to read and maintain. So, diba, when things are organized, we will be able to retrieve anything that we want, especially if you'll be using it for your project and you'll be presenting it. So it will be easier for you to determine which part of the code do this job or do this function. And as well as when you are already revising or fixing bugs in your system. Another advantage is that cached JavaScript files can speed up page loads. So the proper syntax in declaring an external JavaScript is as follows. So again, we need to have it, or we need to use the script tags, And inside the start tag of our script, we have to indicate the type attribute and the value text JavaScript, indicating that what we are using is a JavaScript code. And then we'll be using the src attribute to assign or to declare the file name of the file that we're going to use. So in this example, we use external.js. So another reminder, guys, if you are creating a project, please try to use one folder for all the resources that you are using. So try to create a project one. So all of the resources that you'll be using, all the CSS file, all the images, all the multimedia elements that you'll be using, as well as with the JavaScript file, doon siya nakalagay. For you to be more organized in maintaining your system or in developing your system. Then we have here JavaScript display possibilities. So JavaScript can display data in different ways. We have writing into an alert box, which we do a while ago. So that is an example or a quick example on how we can do or how we can create an alert box. But we can also do that using the window.alert followed by the value. So what the value that we used a while ago was welcome students. Then writing into the HTML output using the document.write, writing into an HTML element using inner HTML, and writing into the browser console using the console.log, which we have quick demo a while ago. So inside the console.log code, so we need to declare the content that we want to see. What we have a while ago was hello world, or you can also use mathematical operations. So in this example, we have alert mode. So again, we have to include the window.alert syntax inside the start tags. So inside the start tag and end tag of our script. And then declare window.alert, and inside the parentheses, we have to include, for example, a mathematical operation. So once this code will be run on our browser, this is how it's going to look like. So it will display the sum of the mathematical operation 5 plus 6. So that is why we have 11 in our output. Next, if we're going to use the write method using the document.write, so again, we have to declare it inside the or in between the start tag and end tag of our script. Then use document.write followed by the content that you want to display. So in this example, we use again the mathematical operation 5 plus 6. So from our output, you can see the heading 1 that we have declared, followed by the paragraph, my first paragraph, and the value of the mathematical operation or the sum of 5 plus 6, which is 11. The next one, we can use write method inside a button. So that means once we click in a button, it will display what is the sum or the output of the write method that we use. So in this example, again, we have declared the heading 1 and paragraph, and then we use a button. And then we have there on click. So that means it will only run or it will only display the content of document.write 5 plus 6 once the user click on the button, which we named try it, which you can see right now in the output. So that is our heading 1, our paragraph, and our button with the name try it. So once the user click on try it, it will show the result or the sum 11. So JavaScript programs Most JavaScript programs contain many JavaScript statements. On the other hand, a computer program is a list of instructions to be executed by a computer. In programming language, these programming instructions are called statements. And in JavaScript program, it is a list of programming statements. So the JavaScript statements are composed of the values, operators, expressions, keywords, and comments. So most JavaScript programs contain many JavaScript statements. And the Java statements or the statements are executed one by one in the same order as they are written. JavaScript programs or JavaScript statements are often called as JavaScript code. So adding JavaScript to a page can be in two methods. We have embedded script and external script. So embedded script is used inside the script tags, or what we can also term it as the inline JavaScript. So again, we need to use the script tags. Inside the script tags is the JavaScript code. And then for our external JavaScript, so in here, we'll be using the src attribute, followed by the value of the file name that we are going to use. So what is important to remember on that note is that the file that you are going to use should be with the file name .js when you save it. So parang HTML. So you have to save the file with the file extension .htm. The other one for CSS, you have to save it with the file extension .css. For JavaScript, you need to use the file extension .js. And then for script placement, so the script element go anywhere in the document, but the most common places for scripts are in the head of the document and at the very end of the body. So it is recommended that you don't sprinkle them throughout the document because they would be difficult to find and maintain. And aside from that, as mentioned earlier, the statements or the JavaScript statements are executed one by one in the same order as they are written. So for most scripts, the end of the document just before the body tag is the preferred placement because the browser will be done parsing the document and its DOM structure. And that would be all for introduction to JavaScript. Do you have any questions about that?